Hi, it's Louisa Dahl, and welcome to the Interactive Minds podcast, where I talk with passionate marketers, innovators, and digital leaders about their specific recipes for success. In today's show, I interview Ursula Ringham from SAP talking about influencer marketing. Ursula has been in Australia to speak at the Interactive Minds Digital Summit out from the US. Here's 3 things you're going to learn from today's show. 1, how a B2B company can use influencer marketing in practice. 2, why you need to have a scope of work in place for influencers. And 3, the types of content you can generate through influencers. And a hint, it's not all about social. Let's get into it. Today I'm here with Ursula Ringham, Head of Global Influencer Marketing at SAP. Ursula's an innovative leader in this space. She uses social media, live video, digital marketing, and she's been an early adopter around a whole range of things, working at Apple and Adobe in past careers. Welcome, Ursula.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Oh my gosh, where do I even start? I'd say that I got my career at Adobe and Apple in developer relations. Stay-at-home mom. I always tell people that if you are jump-starting or restarting your career, there's always hope out there. I was a stay-at-home mom for about 6 years, and when I tried to get back in the market, no one wanted to hire me. And SAP was that one company that took a chance on me 7 years ago. And so, started off writing customer success stories and then got into social media. Who knew 7 years ago that I'd become kind of like this, I don't like to say I'm an expert, but I know a lot about social media.
Awesome.
And then I am now head of our global influencer marketing program.
Fantastic. It's a great space to be in, and it's really exciting to see a global B2B company leading the way in this space as well.
Definitely. And SAP, we're kind of that hidden gem in the high-tech industry. People don't know a lot about us, but we're the biggest company that a lot of people use but don't realize it.
Yeah, fantastic. Tell us about, I know you got some good stats around this. Tell us about SAP's stats.
Yeah, so I think it's around 72% of all the world's transactions are run through SAP.
That's amazing. Yeah. Such a huge number of transactions.
Yep.
And before SAP and before you took that kind of career break, I suppose, what were your roles like then?
So at Adobe and Apple, I was on the developer relations side. And so this was pre Intel processing where if you had like an Adobe Premiere product, let's say hypothetically it existed back then, you would create a plugin to work with to enhance the product. And so with Apple, the same thing. We were working with developers that we wanted them to create software products that worked on Mac OS X, the brand new Unix system.
Awesome.
So my role was to ensure these developers had all the tools they needed to create the application and then cradle to grave with them to get the product up and running on market.
Fantastic. And tell us now about your current role, Head of Global Influencer Marketing. What does that mean?
I love the role. It's fantastic. So what I'm doing is I'm working with these thought leaders. They're trusted voices that can influence buyer decisions. And so it's people to people marketing. So it's nothing new. It's just a new tactic within marketing. And the great thing is I'm a people person. I'm an extrovert. And so what I have to do is go out there and find the right voices that can tell our story, but in their lens.
Fantastic. And you've been doing this for a couple of years now. What does the team look like at SAP?
Oh my gosh. So our team is, there's so many different divisions within our team. We cross-collaborate with so many different teams. So we have a quite small team, but then SAP is a very large company, 96,000 people. And so there's different divisions that have their own offshoots of influencer marketing. But when I came into this role, I wanted us all to consolidate in the sense that we have like a monthly meeting. So our team sets the best practices and works with all the other teams. And that also involved bringing everyone under one software application that we work together to manage and discover our influencers. So now the entire company, everyone involved in influencer relations, we know who's working with which influencers.
Great.
And then we can share, any kind of pros and cons of working with these people and what kind of successes we've had.
Fantastic. And I mean, it sounds like SAP is really embracing influencers. How did that come about? How did the buy-in for influencers come around in this large organization?
Well, it's interesting. when I was first at SAP and I was a full-time employee, I worked in our small and mid-sized business arena. And I started working with influencers back then, like, for example, Brian Moran, very well known in the small and mid-sized business influencer area. And it's basically, I was just doing research on how else can we have voices tell our story. And someone within the company, Todd, what is your last name? I forgot. He's no longer with SAP. He said, well, why don't you look at this guy, Brian Moran? And so that kind of started it for me. And then another colleague of mine, Amisha Gandhi, I got to give her a shout out. She started the influencer program 2 years ago with Jim Dever. And Amisha has gone on to work on the Ariba side and manages comms and analysts and influencer relations over on our Ariba product side. But, it is getting the buy-in. It's showing successes that you have. And it's just another marketing tactic. But with my background in social media and being able to do all of these digital marketing activities with podcasts and videos, when I present to a team on wanting to include them, they trust me. They see the results that I've done. They've seen that I'm an innovator within the company. I won, H2 Innovator of the Year by our CMO 2 years ago. So people, respect that. So with buy-in now, it's a matter of we got to keep innovating and looking and seeing what are the latest trends out there, what are the latest things that we can do, and keep evolving. There's always lessons to be learned.
I agree completely. And out of SAP's marketing then, what role do you think influencers play in the bigger picture of marketing at SAP?
They are a voice, a third party that can validate the topics around our products. So the one thing to understand with influencers is we never want to bring them in to quote unquote sell our product. If we started talking to you like you, Louisa, and say S/4HANA, you're going to go, what are you talking about? But if you start talking about the business challenges of how, businesses can succeed out there, and then they just happen to use our products, right? That's the best way to do it. So we find influencers that have topic knowledge. It might be around ERP or AI or machine learning or IoT. And then we ask them to bring in real world situations, and then the call to action from whatever asset we create with them, whether it's a blog, a podcast, a video, the call to action leads that person to maybe a white paper or a lead gen page or a product marketing page where they can read more. So the idea is that you work with influencers to build that awareness with their audience and then bring people in so they can learn more on their own about SAP and what we can do for your business.
Awesome. And do you sit within a marketing team?
Yes. So we are under Alicia Tillman, who is our CMO. She's awesome. A shout out to you, Alicia. She's out of our New York City office. She was just voted as, or not voted, but Forbes number 14 out of 50 top CMOs, which is awesome. She's moving the dial there. And I think our influencer activities are really helping with that. So our team, we actually report into Johan Reed, who is our SVP of Global Events. And so this is a recent move, and I think it's quite smart because a lot of the content that we create with our influencers are at events. So the idea is that what Johan always says, it's content in, content out. And I always like to say, like, we can bring all these people into one place and we can create a lot of content. So you can have our influencers talk to customers, partners, analysts, other media, and they could do all sorts of things from creating a blog out of that interview or a video or podcast or whatnot. So we sit under events, which is part of our whole corporate marketing team.
Great. And is there a fine line between them kind of selling or representing your company in these interviews? Like, how do they weave that in to make it clear that that's the approach they're recommending?
Yeah. So what I like to do is, like, we have a Tech Unknown series. There are videos and podcasts. And what I like to do is we're bringing an influencer in to explore the edge of next. What's the next technology out there that's making a difference for businesses? So I don't like to say, like, the influencers are there to promote our product. It's more to investigate what's going on. And, with the series, we still have a lot to learn. Like, I want it to be more storytelling. And that's why I was asking you about your podcasting equipment here, because there's some ideas I have around that. And so with our influencers, there are some very prominent ones that work with a lot of different companies, some of our competitors, and that's okay because they're talking about the topic. And it's a matter of then the vehicles of getting it out there to the various audiences. But we work with a lot of micro influencers also. And I've always said, I never want you, quote unquote, selling the product. It's talking about the technologies, talking about the topics, talking about the business challenges. And if we can get a customer for our influencer to talk to, that's the best, kind of influence there, because then prospects out there can relate to a customer and go, oh, I have had that same problem. And if they are finding a solution, I need to research that more.
Yeah, great. Do your influencers always distribute the content for you as well, or are they often kind of creating the content?
Great question. So it's a combination. There's a lot of things we do with experimenting where we will have the influencer create their own content. Like Ronald Van Loon is a great example of that. He has his own video production crew, and he brings his iPhone and different, he's got all his little devices, and he will make videos, and it's branded under his name, right? But then we also have our Tech Unknown, series that we like to do. And we don't, we're not outwardly saying this is SAP. It's just the Tech Unknown series. So there's different ways you can do it. And at events, I like it when an influencer can just, with their mobile device, sit there and talk with another, might be a customer or maybe another influencer, and just promote it directly to their channels. So to answer your question, it's a combination. Depends on the asset. And so, we definitely like the influencers promoting it to their audience, but then also SAP, it's a great opportunity to build awareness about that influencer through our channels and our audience too.
Yeah, fantastic. Now you're going to tell us today about a specific campaign you've worked on in the past. Tell us how you've used influencers and some of the ways that it's worked for you.
I had a really cool program. It was called the Catalyst program. And what I wanted to do was bring a programmatic approach to influencer marketing. And this was in my previous role at SAP, where I was heading up our digital strategy for the small and mid-sized businesses. And so what we did was we worked with an agency. I'll put a shout out there to Social Tribe. And what we did is we worked with them to discover different influencers. And let me back up a second. There were 4 topics in the small and mid-sized business area that I wanted to focus on. So I wanted to find 4 influencers, and then I wanted to find a generalist. And so what we did was we worked with Social Tribe, and we all used a program called Tracker. And Tracker is an application that you can use to track influencers, and you put out their keywords, and it does a search for you and brings back people. And then what we did is we just approached each person. This was we'd find 30 influencers per topic. Remember, there's 4 of them. And then I would dive in, and maybe 8 were really good, but then you have to make sure it's a good match. And so you'd have to call them, set up an interview. If I could meet them one-on-one was best. And we would, just discuss their background and make sure is this the right move for them as a brand? Right? If you want to come in and work with us for an entire year, or is this the right move for SAP? Because they're going to be kind of this, not a brand ambassador, but they're going to be representing our brand. And so the idea was that we would meet quarterly somewhere in an SAP office around the United States. And so we'd bring in these influencers, and we'd create our own mini event. And what we do there is then we had a total of 5 influencers, 4 focused on the different topics. So we had HR, we had CX, we had, what was it? I'm drawing a blank here on some of these, but it was on the 4 topics. And then we had a generalist that would interview them. So we had Sarah Evans was our generalist. And so we'd bring them in once a quarter. So we met up in New York, we met in Boston. And what we would do is we'd work with our product marketing teams on these 4 topic areas and say, hey, what's trending right now with SAP with our products? And then we talk to the influencer and ask them the same thing. What's trending out there in this market space? And we'd have this nice marriage of finding a topic that we could talk about, and then it would lead people to then where our product marketing team wanted them to go for either a lead gen page or product marketing page. And the key thing, and this is the interesting thing out of this, is I wanted a consistent voice throughout the year, but then we'd get a lot of content. So we'd bring them together in our office and we'd do a video interview. Well, guess what you can do with a video interview? You can create a podcast out of that with the audio. You can strip the audio out of it. And then you can also have someone create a blog out of it. Awesome. So the great thing was we got 3 pieces of content per influencer. So we had 4 of them. So that's 12 pieces of content around this. And each one would interlink to each other because we'd have a theme per each meetup. And then because we had everyone there, we're like, let's do a live stream. So we'd promote this that let's do a live stream around this topic, tune in, and it would be like a half an hour live stream. And then what I had all of our influencers do is do this teaser that as they were journeying to traveling to the event, they would put on their Instagram stories. Hey, here I am. I'm going to be doing this. And then during the event, I would also have our social channels promote that we are, here's our live stream's going to be coming up. Here's some behind the scenes. And so it was a teaser to get people interested in it. And then the great thing is working with an agency, they were able to package everything together. So leading up to this event, this pseudo event that we made up, our influencers would each get a package with social copy that they could put their own voice on, but it's always good to have a template to start with, some social graphics. And then when we were at the event, I would take photos and we could use that for future promotion.
So you got a whole lot of content, not even just the three things you mentioned, but then social content, photos, etc.
Exactly. And it was in a controlled environment to a point that, we let our influencers, bring their lens to the topic, but it was controlled in that we could get those 3 pieces of content per topic and then really influence the strategy around when we release it and whatnot.
So what did you do in terms of that strategy? Like, were there any special tactics that you used, or did you, space those releases out over the quarter?
Yeah, so we spaced it out over the quarter. And the great thing also is when you create this content, don't think it's one and done, right? So what we could do is, as we're like season 2 is going to roll out, because we had 4 seasons, right? As season 2 rolls out, you can have like, hey, throwback Thursday or flashback Friday. Let's find out what happened there. And we'd also ask our influencers to do that too. And so you could be in Q4 and we could ask the influencer, hey, remember, we still have the Q1 activities we did with you. So it's this evergreen content that could keep on, working. And then also we had the podcast. And the podcast was then on iTunes, I think Spotify, and I think one more. I can't remember if it was Stitcher. I can't remember if Stitcher's still around. I can't remember if that was one of them. But, it was a constant, always on tactic of working with influencers, working with the SAP brand channels for social amplification and also amplification through our influencers.
Fantastic. Sounds like a great campaign. And how did it go internally for you?
It went really well. And the interesting thing is, this is a note to the listeners out there, is when you're starting an influencer program, you're going to be like, what are my benchmarks? You don't know. You're starting off. You're like, is 100 views on this piece of content good? I don't know. And so the great thing is what we did is each quarter we would establish the benchmark and say, okay, we want to improve on that. And the great thing is then we can go to our influencers, and some of them had it down pat. They know how to market this, and it was great. And then some we were like, hey, we need, to do a little bit more amplification on this because we would track everything. So that's another thing. Sorry, forgot about that. All of the content out there, it resided on SAP.com, so we could use Omniture to track everything. So we put tracking codes on every piece of content that went out there. So if our influencers were tweeting something on on Twitter, the link that they would send people to would have a tracking code. So we could track all of that and really manage our influencers and work with them on it. Yeah. And it was a very collaborative process. And so our benchmarks, we met our benchmarks, we exceeded them. And then also the thing that we did was we grew our social channels. We had SAP is known as a very, for large enterprise, but we have a whole subset for the small and mid-sized businesses. And mind you, when I say small and sized businesses, it's under $1 billion in revenue, which I know it's like, Ursula, is that really small? But there are subset, companies that make, 20,000 a year, 40,000 a year. Yeah. And so we had social channels specific for this market, and we really started to grow that. Fantastic. We were building awareness that SAP's in this market and people wanted to tune in and listen.
And obviously, I suppose the fact that you're now in this role and doing this on a broader scale proves that, SAP continues to buy into this as a strategy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And as I said, it's that third-party validation. And I think the one thing that you have to be cautious of is, in the B2C market right now, it's influencers are going rampant. I mean, they're all over the place. And I have a lot of colleagues that I know in different companies, and it's a little crazy because everyone's an influencer, right? Everyone can be like that Instagram influencer and be by the pool and take a photo and go have 1 million followers. But on the B2B side, it's more around your expertise. It is around the knowledge that you share. I mean, I have some of my influencers that are data scientists. That's their day job. And they happen to fall into being an influencer. Like Kirk Bourne is a great example of that. And it's interesting. We were working with him recently, and he said, Ursula, I have my, my day job. I'm not here to sell SAP. And I said, no, I don't want you to. I want you here for your product knowledge. I want you to, come to our events and immerse yourself and see what we're doing. And he came to one of our recent big events, Sapphire, and he was blown away. He's like, wow, I had no idea what SAP was doing around, data management. And so that's like, it's it's twofold. It's like, I want our influencers to be informed, and then they can talk to their audience about it, and it's more authentic because they're being honest. Like, I had no idea SAP was doing all this. This is fantastic. Do you know what's going on?
Yeah.
And so it comes across like the Tech Unknown series is we are really sending influencers in to really just discover with their product topic knowledge, just what's even happening in this arena. They don't even have to talk about the product. It's just what's going on.
Yeah, that's exciting. So in that scenario, you said that he has a day job as well.
Yeah.
How does that work? I mean, was he looking for influencer work, or was it a contact, or how did that come about? Do you remember?
Yeah. Oh, no, definitely. Because he was someone who's on my watch list. Like, and that's the thing that influencers, you know, I think everyone knows this, but you're a voyeur out there, right? I have to be socially, like, I keep tabs on all of these different influencers I want to work with. And so he was someone I just approached. I approached him, and, you know, we worked with him on a podcast, and I said, I would love to bring you to Sapphire. And it was great because one of our product marketing teams is like, Kurt, we'd love for you to write a blog for us. And it was all just very thought leadership. And so it was very organic how it came about, because mind you, with influencers, you know, they have their own brand. Like, he has his day job.
Yeah.
And he doesn't want to have any conflict of interest. And I said, no, we're not going to have you promote any products. And so this gets into like dotting your I's, crossing your T's around, you know, around contracts and negotiations, and just making sure everyone's on the same page for what to expect.
Yeah.
Because that would be the worst thing is we bring him to an event and it's like, Kurt, we want you to tweet about this product. It's like, no, I'm never going to do that. And so, the point of bringing them in is like they get to meet other influencers. They get to meet, you know, I introduce them to a lot of like our actual engineers, developers, like on the, you know, on the data science side. And so, you know, the relationship came organically where I just reached out. I took a phone call with him. We had some emails, and then the rest is history that we just started to work together.
And I love this because I think, you know, the vision for people who haven't used influencer marketing before is that, you know, you're basically paying someone to show your product. And I think, you know, that's very much come from the B2C background, but it's great to hear that it's not about that. It's a longer term relationship, and the different way in that you're exploring this is proof of that. It's really great to see that perspective.
Definitely. The long-term relationship is key, because then the more you work with people, you know, and then you can plan out for the whole year. Hey, I'd love for you, you know, Tamara or Kurt or, you know, Ronald, could you come to these different events? And they're global, right? They can go anywhere in the world. And when you have that relationship, there's a trust built. And they know what to expect. We all know how to work together. And then when I work internally with product marketing teams, they know that I've already vetted these influencers. Yeah. And they know that, hey, if Ursula's recommending we work with this influencer, then it's legit. Let's move forward. And then they don't have to worry about, you know, all of like, we'll help them set up the SOWs, the scope of work. And, you know, that's where I see that influencer marketing, it's a tactic, and you should have an influencer marketing program, but you're also a service to people within your company for how to work with them. And we have the relationship.
Yeah,
you know,
definitely. I've been lucky enough to spend the last kind of 24 hours with Ursula here in Australia, which has been awesome. And I've heard a few of her stories around finding influencers, which are very entertaining. And I think probably something that I've learned out of that is that finding an influencer is quite a high touch element. It's not something you want to do via an email. Are you able to kind of shed a bit more light on that for the listeners?
Absolutely. So just like a cold call, you don't want a cold email. And the thing that's interesting is like I have a social presence, not huge, but I have a social presence because I've been in the tweet chats 5 years ago. I was doing the live streams. I was engaging with a lot of these influencers. A lot of them I don't use or work with or collaborate with because it's just the wrong industry. But the main point is that you have to build that relationship, because then when I do contact them, even if I haven't spoken to them, I might, use like, hey, I spoke with this influencer. They recommended that we connect. Let's go out for coffee since I know they're going to be here in town, or let's just have a phone call and get to know each other. And the first part of like the phone call is I'm just like, hey, tell me about you. I want to hear more about you and what you do. And I really follow my influencers. I connect with all of them on Facebook. Facebook is where you get to see the personal side, and also on Instagram. And then Twitter, I follow them just to see what kind of content they come up with, and LinkedIn. But I like to keep in touch with them. I'm a people person. And so when I finally do see them, like we talk about, hey, how did that go with your daughter? She just graduated from college. That's awesome. That is key. You have to build that relationship. It's necessary to build up this trust with the audience you're trying to reach.
It's really a partner relationship. I mean, I was thinking about this earlier and I was thinking it's quite a fine line really between maybe an influencer or someone sponsoring you or a partner. You know, I think influencer is a very catchy term at the moment, but I guess these types of relationships have always been around. It's really about the amplification of that and the amplification of the content as a result of that now that is really, I suppose, got the hype around it.
Yeah, and it's also that they are a trusted voice on that topic. So, I'm not going to even go to the B2C side because that's just so different. But, we have these people that they were a practitioner. Maybe they were in HR for 20 years using various products, and now they're a consultant out there helping other companies understand the HR topic. But then on the side, they have a podcast about the future of work. That's the type of person we want to work with, is they're already in it, and then just, bringing awareness about SAP to their audience.
Yeah, definitely. Now, I know that a big part of this is making sure that the setup is right in the first place, to mitigate any risks and manage, I suppose, what could be ahead in the unknown. We've already spoken about vetting the influencer properly and making sure you actually make an attempt to build a relationship rather than kind of go in cold. What other tips can you give people when they're looking for influencers or trying to build those relationships? Yeah,
so a big tip, and this relates back to our Catalyst program, is that, you definitely have a scope of work, just like, to make sure everyone's on the same page of what to expect. And what happened halfway through our season was one of the influencers, the company that he has a regular day job. There happened to be a conflict of interest that came about between SAP, and we had to sever the relationship. But everyone understood, but you have to go in knowing that something can happen. Or maybe an influencer, sometimes there's a lot of drama, I'm sorry to say, between influencers and, you might have and cultural differences, right? So someone who's in North America, they might not culturally be a good fit for Saudi Arabia or for Japan. It's very different. And so you have to be cognizant of who you're bringing in to work with and play out the scenarios of what could go right, what could go wrong. And sometimes influencers, you have to remind them of that, if we're going to work with you, it's representing our brand, even if it's just about thought leadership topics, that, they could say something disparaging that has nothing to do with SAP, but they're putting it out there in social media. And that's why it's so, difficult. Like, I don't like to talk on social media about religion or politics or whatnot, but our influencers are people. They're going to do whatever they're going to do. But, sometimes you have to be cognizant of what's happening. Just keep tabs on what's going on. And I've sometimes had, our main social governance team contact me and say, hey, have you worked with this influencer before? Look what they just put out there. And it's something political. And I'm like, oh, come on. That's just who they are. And do we have to be that hypersensitive? It just depends on the topic. So we've had, fortune, knock on wood or wherever the wood is here, that we haven't had any major issues. But it's something you always have to think about and be cognizant of. Yeah, definitely. In the Catalyst program, if you were doing it again now, is there anything you would do differently? Oh my gosh, I kind of want to do it again. It was actually really fun. But what I would do differently is I would scale it. So I would put it, instead of having our own events that we created just our own mini event, I would bring it to existing events, tag on to it. Because the interesting thing is, SAP, we have our own global events all over the world, but then there are industry events, and a lot of your influencers are already going there, or maybe they live there, right? So that's the one thing I would change, is just tag on to existing events, right? And then the other thing is I would bring a global perspective, because the one thing, what I'm doing right now is I'm attempting to build out this global program. And that's why I'm in Australia. I was just in Tokyo. I was in Europe earlier. Is every region's different. And I think sometimes from a global perspective, you have a global campaign and you're like, here, regions, roll this out. But sometimes you have to, be cognizant and say, you know what? We had this North American influencer. They're not going to be a good fit for Japan. It has to be totally different. And so for the Catalyst program, those are the two things I would change is, create the content around existing events, and then also look for regional representation of, in language, in region influencers. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's localization, isn't it? Of content, really, at the end of the day. It makes so much sense that you can't just do it once and expect to be able to use it globally. Exactly. Yeah. Fantastic. Well, what a pleasure talking with you today and hearing some more about this. Such a fascinating topic. And I know Ursula's just spoken for us at the Digital Summit, and everyone was very eagerly taking notes on this topic. It's very popular at the moment, very hot. And I think it's great to see some different applications of how influencer marketing can be real for organizations across different sectors. Yeah, Louisa, thank you so much. And I've so enjoyed being a speaker here at the Digital Summit in Australia. And I can't wait to see the future of just future collaborations with all of you down here.
Oh, fantastic. Now, how can people find you, Ursula, if they'd like to get in touch?
Yeah, so it's just my name, Ursula Ringham. So Ursula Ringham, Ringham. You can find me on Twitter, so at Ursula Ringham, LinkedIn, and Facebook. I don't really you keep that kind of personal.
Sure.
But, you can also just send me an email, ursula.ringham@sap.com.
Fantastic. Thanks again for being on the show.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. If you liked this episode, please remember to subscribe. And I'd love you to rate and review this podcast. My recommended action from today's show is to map out some ideas on how you can use influencer marketing. Please join me in the Interactive Minds Facebook group, where I do weekly lives and the marketing industry connects. You can access today's show notes at interactiveminds.com/podcast. See you next week.